'Cause I'll be your friend, an ear I'll lend. I'll tell you time and time again, it's true.
Welcome back to our cosy, comfy corner of the world. I'm Amy, and whether you're joining us for the first time or if you've been with us through this whole series, it's lovely to be together again. This is our final episode in the first series of Chats with the Worry Wizard. So whilst we return to wonder about, I wonder if I have to make myself smaller so other people feel more comfortable, I'd also like to spend time noticing and reflecting on what's emerged during our time together. When we started this series, we set out with an ambition, not to chase perfect answers or decide what's right or wrong. Instead, we wanted to make space to wonder together and sit comfortably within the questions. And this brings me to something that I'd love to pause with. Throughout this series, we focus so much on our children, on their experiences, their wonderings, their struggles. But you're in this too. Think about this current wondering, about your child questioning if they should make themselves smaller. I wonder what's happening for you. You're watching this, you're feeling this, you're navigating what to do about it. And if you found yourself advocating for your child, asking for accommodations, for understanding, for space, something else might be happening too. Your own shrinking, your own wondering about whether you're too much, too loud, too demanding. I'm holding so many adults in my mind as I open this conversation. People who have advocated from a place of gritty, determined love, asking for what their child needs. And it's not easy. The responses can be vastly different. Being listened to, being offered space to explore what might be helpful. And then the opposite, being met with resistance, with the subtle or not so subtle message that you're being difficult, demanding, that you need to help your child fit in better rather than asking the space to adapt. Suddenly, you can find yourself in your own version of, should I be less? Questions such as, should I stop advocating so much? Should I help my child blend in more? Am I making things worse by pushing for what I think they need? It's lovely to welcome my therapeutic friend, family therapist, Denise, with us today. I thought, Denise, it would be good to begin with a pause, to reflect on what's emerged from our conversations together, and to think about you, the listener, as the adult caring for the child in all of this. I've been thinking, Denise, about our conversations over these episodes, kind of coming to the end feels like a lovely moment to pause and reflect back. And especially thinking about those parents advocating for their children. I'm sure you're holding parents in mind yourself. And there's something that keeps surfacing for me, something that you've woven through your responses a number of times, sometimes naming it and sometimes not naming it, but the idea of the space between stimulus and response, between a child's big feeling and our reaction to it, between someone suggesting you're being difficult and us believing that we are, between us watching our child struggle and us rushing to fix it. And when I think about that parent advocating for their child and being met with resistance, I wonder about that space between hearing you're being too demanding and believing that it is an absolute truth. Because within that space, even if it's just a breath, we move straight from the message to the belief, from they think I'm too much to I am too much. And I suppose I just wanted us to wonder about what if we can create even a tiny bit of space, the possibility of noticing, that's what they're saying, but is it true? Or is this a space that's struggling to make room? I wonder if we could wonder about this a little bit, especially when we're navigating difficult moments like advocating for our children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're right, Amy. I think that creating a space between, it does create choice. choice to decide what's right, choice to sit with what we're feeling, choice to sort of work out what we're feeling. And we do this by doing that lovely thing called the pause that we keep coming back to. We can check in with our bodies and check in with our thoughts. And this all can be done in seconds. Your body will be telling you to take notice of something. Something is happening here. Your body will tell us. So the pause creates the space to ask what's going on here, and importantly, the pause also helps us to slow it down, to not react. So this sort of becoming aware of our thinking gives us a choice of to respond rather than to react. So I think it's we have thoughts like I'm sad, and that sort of defines us. Whereas if we actually just sit with that, we can think, well, I'm feeling sad. And when you define it as a feeling, you can go into that more about why. It's not just a full stop sentence. I'm sad. I'm feeling sad. You can explore why. But I know it's hard to pause. I get that. I know that I struggle with that, and it's hard not to react. It's hard not to defend when it's your child, particularly. So it does take practice. It does take practice to notice, perhaps in the calmer times, where we can check in with ourselves, not for the big stuff, but practice with the small stuff. But I think it's also important to kind of recognise that, oops, I've done it again, sort of thing, that I've reacted here, and perhaps not in a way I would want to, and that perhaps isn't that helpful. But again, it's, I think, being kind to yourself in those moments, and knowing that there's always opportunities to repair.
I think you saying about being kind to yourself in those moments, I talked about the idea that there's lots of parents I'm holding in mind and how challenging that can be. And particularly, we were talking before about context, and some of these contexts will be really challenging and they'll be returned to again and again. So that sense of kind of getting pickled in difficulty is something that's coming up for me, and how challenging it can be to be kind to yourself in those spaces. And I suppose that's something that we'll look at more as we go through these chats together. Denise, I'm talking about the space between as something that's stayed with me from our conversations, and I wondered, this is a new space for you and I to sit in together, and I wonder, could you share something that stayed with you from wondering together in these episodes?
Gosh, our talks together have been so rich and so full. But I think for me, reflecting on this time, I think I really get to a place where that idea of presence is important. The presence that you have with another, and it's very hard to describe it, isn't it? But it's been a theme. It's been ever present in our talks. But this presence is something I think that it doesn't have words. It doesn't need words. It's sort of like a felt sense between people. it's for the other person, for that child, it's like a feeling of being seen, and when we feel seen, we feel like we belong. um that, and with belonging we feel safe and we feel secure. And I think in each episode we've come back to that, haven't we? We've come back to that sense of the importance of being near, perhaps when there's no words, or words aren't right at that moment, but actually connecting, and perhaps that can be in silence, um, or perhaps it can be playful, or dancing around the kitchen, connecting. And there's a felt sense, isn't there? And it's sort of, children will recognise that unspoken tenderness that we hold for them. And it sort of reminds me of, when you've got your baby in your arms, and there's that wonderful gaze, isn't there? And your baby sort of has that intense gaze into yours. And we know what that does, don't we, to connection, to that feeling a sense of safety and security. And I think that gaze, then, we find that through our parents, families, and our loved ones, hopefully through our life. But really what we're seeking is connection and a sense of belonging, and I think it's the presence that allows that. Yeah, I think for me that's just been something that I think on more.
I think what came up for me as you were talking about that is that question, what is enough? And how, without looking at that and wondering about it and noticing it, it might not feel enough. Sometimes when things feel really difficult, we're reaching out for bigger things. We talked about that image of the one-man band with all the tools. One of the stories that stayed with me, perhaps because it connected with how I sometimes show up as a person, is there's a story of the singer Pink, and her daughter was bullied at school for her appearance, and Pink went and made a PowerPoint presentation to show to her daughter of all of these women across the ages, and their power, and I've been in similar situations where I've made documents of information to try and download information onto children that I care about when it felt difficult and important. And possibly I didn't notice how my presence could have been enough, how I didn't allow that might offer something. So I suppose I wonder how that will land to people listening, whether, but can that possibly be enough, whether that question will still be around for some people, or whether it might lead people to noticing how they currently already show up, and the value of that. I'd be curious about that.
As we can always offer. I think we can bring ourselves and do the being, but I think we can also offer the doing as well. And if children will just pick, they'll hear what they need to hear from a trusted loved one, and some things will land with them, and some won't. And I think it's like, I suppose the beauty in making that presentation is the intention behind it, isn't it? The love and intention behind what we do as parents to try and make things better for our children.
Yes, I gave my time and energy to this because it really matters to me. Yeah, no, it's lovely. Thank you, Denise. Throughout this series, we've wondered about children's experiences, but you're navigating your own version of these same wonderings. If your child is learning to shrink, to make themselves smaller, to dim their colours, to spend all their time with should I be less thoughts, you're not just witnessing it, you're in it. You might be advocating in spaces that resist, fighting for accommodations that can feel so difficult, asking for understanding and being met with suggestions that you're overreacting, you're being too sensitive, demanding too much. You might be carrying your own should I be less thoughts. Should I stop pushing so hard? Should I just help them fit in better? Am I making things worse? And here's what I would like to name, that fighting for your child while spaces resist, it depletes you. It's not just tiring, it touches something deeper. Because when you advocate from a place of, my child deserves space for who they are, and you're met with, your child needs to adapt, you're not just facing practical pushback, you're carrying the weight of perhaps being the only one fighting for your child's right to be seen and understood. And whilst others share this experience, I know how lonely it can feel. Denise, I wanted to ask you, this experience of parents or grown-ups around a child finding themselves shrinking whilst trying to support a child who's being asked to shrink. It's something worth pausing with. And I just wondered, what do you notice about this?
Well, it, it it's so demanding, trying to navigate, finding a way for your child and communicating with the professionals around them, the context around them, usually it's schools or and and children when they receive that message, you're too much. Well, I think parents sometimes feel, are they being labelled as such? It used to be, they're an over anxious mother, they're demanding, you're being too protective and you're intense. And I think, dealing with those barriers, not being heard, it's exhausting, it's demoralizing, and I think, essentially we can sort of think, well, is there something in that? So we really need support, and that can be through our family or through our friends or through associations, communities that can support you, and I think actually recognizing that the demanding nature of it, and because it's ongoing, isn't it? It's not just like a one-off event, it's ongoing. I think it's important to care for yourself, that while you're holding your child and supporting them, you also need that space to be supported, and to think about your own well-being in this, and to make sure that you've got people alongside you that really get what you're trying to do, really want to help you navigate that, really want to be there for you. And also, but be very clear in your own mind about what your motivations are, your intentions, and keep coming back to that. Pat yourself on the back, because this is your child, isn't it? And you're trying your very best. Nobody else is going to do it in the way that you will. So, celebrate yourself, but also with tenderness, and knowing it is difficult to be that voice, knocking on the door, having another meeting, sending another email. Yeah, don't minimize it.
It's really interesting that you use the word with tenderness. I don't know that tender is a word that I use very often. And in writing this and sitting with you, it's a word that has come up a number of times. And I think possibly because these podcasts that we're creating have begun with children's wonderings. The wonderings are so broad and vast, and the space to hold them feels so tender because we're not able to sit with a neat response. As you're talking about knocking at a door or returning for another meeting, I'm holding so many stories that I've sat in of a parent sat in a room with many professionals, feeling alienated, feeling like the problem in the room. And somewhere in that is their child. And tenderness just feels like such a precious word. It doesn't offer us answers, but it offers us a quality of how we kind of hold this conversation. Just thinking about parents, you talking about community, not feeling alone. It might not just be in the spaces that you're advocating for your child that you don't feel a sense of community. It might be that your child's experience of the world is different to your friends or your family's experience. And they might have a strong sense of what we're going back to the shoulds, what you should do. And we're encouraging quiet noticing of your child in these spaces. But that quiet noticing, you might see your child in a way that's different to how others see them. You might see what helps them thrive as different. That can be quite lonely, can't it?
Yeah. So where do you go with that?
Yeah.
I think, talking with parents that do have to engage with professionals in one way or the other, they talk about putting their professional head on. They go into it where they feel that they can't be too emotional. They can't bring their emotions to it. They have to be this level-headed and well thought out presentation of being a parent that belies really what's going on. And I think that takes a huge amount of effort. So the tenderness to give yourself and for others and to receive from others is really important to negate the toughness.
Yes. At the Worry Wizard, we talk about our well-being seesaw, the idea of balancing our tools to support our worries with and well-being with the worries that we have, so that our well-being can stay shining. And I think of this as we speak about adults advocating for a child. If much of our focus is on supporting our child, we also need to notice our own well-being. And how do we go about finding spaces, whether it's friends, partners, professionals, communities, where we don't have to shrink, where we can show up fully and say, this is hard, I'm tired, I'm worried I'm not doing enough, I'm worried I'm doing too much. And as I'm saying this, I'm thinking, people will be thinking about themselves in this and whether or not the communities are coming, spaces are coming to mind for them that they have. So yes, I suppose I just wanted to just put that out there about that noticing of, you mentioned, Denise, finding spaces where someone witnesses us as we are in it, just as we're trying to witness our children. Because, this time together today is about looking at that grown-ups deserve that space too.
Yeah, really important that you find allies, that can support you and understand the language that you're and the emotions and your intention.
Lovely. It's interesting that you use the word, I love language. It's interesting that you use the word allies, because it's like a war word, isn't it?
It
Yeah.
is, yeah. And before I spoke that word, I thought, yeah, is that an okay word? But really, they're allied to your values, aren't they?
Mm.
And your intentions. They sit beside you in those and hold them for you.
That lovely sense you say, holding it, that everyone's holding together. It's lovely. There's one more thing that I'd like to reflect on before we close. These chats with the Worry Wizard episodes, they sit alongside our Worry Wizard Wonderings episodes. And as I've said before, they begin with real wonderings from children, real questions, real struggles. And as we've continued through this series, I've been struck by something, that they're not small questions, that they are profound wonderings, like, I don't think I'm good at anything. I wonder if I have to make myself smaller so that other people feel more comfortable. They feel like the biggest of ideas. Children trying to make sense of identity, worth, belonging, fairness, justice. And each wondering opens up so many different directions to follow. When a child wonders about making themselves smaller, they might be asking about social skills. Should I use my inside voice? They might be asking about identity. Are the fundamental parts of me acceptable? Or they might be asking about justice. Why do some people get to take up space and I don't? All of those directions are there in that one wondering. There'll be lots of more directions that I haven't even mentioned. And Denise, I wanted to just come back to that about the wonderings that our children bring. They're profound. And I wonder what you notice about that.
Wow, they are profound. And sometimes they just sort of can blow us away, can't they, with the depth of what a child will say. And children are grappling with these big questions. And so, and that's lifelong, isn't it? Some of us are more likely to grapple with those sort of things. So, we're all philosophers, but some more so than others. And so the same with children. And they won't grow out of that. I guess their curiosity will grow with them. And they will be exploring, who are they? They're developing that concept of self. We've talked about how they're starting to realise that their thoughts aren't necessarily facts. They're thoughts, and they also are finding their place in the world in that moment. Who am I? What am I? Where am I in relation to everybody else? So I guess it's not perhaps again, it's not about us having answers, because there isn't necessarily those sort of big answers to those big questions. It's again, it's about that inquiry, isn't it? It's like sitting with them and noticing what they're interested in, and with wonderment. I mean, that children have this amazing sense of wonderment, and I think as adults, to join in that wonderment, and see where it goes, knowing that we don't necessarily have the answers. But again, that's also a lesson, isn't it? And in that, we can have these big questions, but we haven't got maybe an ultimate answer to that.
I think that's interesting, isn't it? I think particularly in the current context, sometimes there's a natural desire to take children as quickly as possible to certainty, because you feel like they might be more comfortable there, and how to hold that space for curiosity. And for us opening this space together, it feels a first. What is it like to sit and wonder together? What might come up? What might get missed? And what will that be like? There's a lot in it, isn't there? And that will mirror what's going on when people are hearing this. This isn't just about helping our children to wonder. We're also wondering about it ourselves. And I suppose I'm curious about that, and I'm going to think about that a lot after our time together, about that wondering.
Yeah, I think it's that, that understanding that we live with uncertainty, and how we navigate that, how we accept it. That there are lots in the world, and lots about people and things that are difficult to understand, and there's big questions about that. And you're talking about wonderings, and I think that's inviting this ongoing wonderings about all sorts of things, as the child develops and moves into teenagers and adulthood. And it's that kind of invitation to dialogue.
Yes, and I suppose in this space together, this is a grown-up space, so we're doing that wondering. But in Worry Wizard Wonderings, there's lots of moments where children and their grown-ups are invited to wonder together. So there's a lovely idea of what would it be like to have a space that we can return to work out how, what are the rules of that space? How do we wonder together? What comes up for us? And yeah, it's it's an intriguing idea to imagine what will be discovered in that space.
Won't it be great if you're in the kitchen and your child comes up to you and says, "I think I need to do some wonderings."
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah, it depends. I know one of the Worry Wizard schools where we have our schools program, one of the teachers got in touch after they've been using it for a time and said, it's wonderful, children are talking about their feelings, but how do we get them to stop? So there is that thing, isn't there? Oh, you'd like to wonder now, would you? Right?
Yes,
Yes.
right.
Yes. Checking your clock. Lovely. As always, I'd like to pause here. Today, we've talked about you, about your well-being, about what happens when you're advocating for a child in spaces that might resist. If you're finding this consistently difficult, if your own sense of worth is feeling too fragile, if the work of advocacy is depleting you in ways that feel unsustainable, reaching out for support may help. Whether that's a trusted friend, a professional, or finding a community of parents navigating similar things, you deserve spaces where you don't have to shrink either. And if you're concerned about your child's well-being, reaching out for support can be a helpful next step. These wonderings we've explored together, they're invitations, not instructions. You're the expert on your family's story. This week, I'd like to offer an invitation to simply notice, to notice you in all of this. When you're supporting your child through a difficult moment, perhaps you could pause afterward and check in on yourself. How am I doing? What's this bringing up for me? Where am I in all of this? And if you're advocating for your child, maybe at school or in other spaces, perhaps you could notice, how does that feel? Am I finding places where I can be fully myself, where I don't have to shrink to be heard? You might also notice the space between, that breath between something happening and how you respond. Not to change anything, but just to notice it's there, that tiny space where choice lives. You don't have to fix anything, just notice. And if you notice you're tired or you're depleted or feeling small yourself, that's valuable information. Not something to judge, but maybe something to listen to, because you matter in this story too. These chats are just beginnings. If you'd like to explore more, you'll find 2 other Worry Wizard podcasts inside In This Together, a year with the Worry Wizard. One is Worry Wizard Wonderings, a co-listen for you and your child at bedtime, where we explore these real wonderings from children together. In the companion episode to this one, your child will encounter the rainbow affirmation, the invitation to notice which thoughts they spend time with, and Ella's story about the wise old tree. The other is Wondering Together, just for grown-ups, with pause points throughout so you feel confident holding what may emerge when listening with your child. Together, they're here to walk alongside you in the everyday ups and downs, the wobbly mornings, the tricky bedtimes, and everything in between. Because these wonderings, they're part of being human, and wondering together, that's where the magic happens. Denise, thank you for today. Not just for today, thank you for wondering alongside me this whole series.
It's been wonderful.
I've been so struck by the enormity of the children's wonderings that have underpinned our chats. I just wanted to thank you for honouring the size, the bigness of them all.
It's been it's been a great experience for me as well, and yeah, I'm gonna go and do my own wonderings. I'm definitely opening to it.
Lovely, thank you. For those listening, we've set out to create space for wondering rather than answering, to sit comfortably with the questions, to trust that the wondering itself is valuable. And I hope that that's what you've felt, that permission to not have all the answers, to return to the questions and to notice rather than to fix. Today felt important because we turned our attention to you, to notice that you're in this story too, to begin to wonder about how you are. You matter in this story. Your well-being matters. Your own need for spaces where you don't shrink, that matters. Thank you for joining me in this cosy, comfy corner of the world, for trusting that questions can be as valuable as answers, and for wondering alongside us. This may be the end of the first series, but the wonderings continue. They'll show up in different forms, at different ages and different contexts. And each time you'll have another opportunity to pause, to notice that space between, and to wonder together. I'm sending you well-being wishes from me, Amy, the Worry Wizard.
When you're feeling scared, like nobody cares, I hope that you know that I will always be there for you. I'm here for you. And tell me what you're thinking, 'cause I want to know. When your heart is sinking, I'll be there to show with proof. I'm here for you. 'Cause I'll be your friend, an ear I'll lend. I'll tell you time and time again, it's true.